Not escape us. It is true that you've read history or right. It is true that labor has from the beginning of history been in the dirt. I agree with you. I agree with everything that you have said. Power will be the arbiter as it always has been the arbiter. It is a struggle of classes. Just as your class dragged down the old feudal nobility, so shall it be dragged down by my class, the working class. If you read your biology and your sociology as clearly as you do your history, you will see that this end I have described is inevitable. It doesn't matter whether it's in 1, 10, or 1,000 years. Your class will be dragged down, and it shall be done by power. We of the labor host have conned that word over till our minds are all tingled with it. Power. It's a kingly word. That's Ernest Everhard, again from Jack London's Iron Heel. In the preface to it, Howard Zinn had said that we need to reconsider what the revolution should look like. So this is Howard Zinn's soft revolution. There is another emergent truth which Jack London ignored, to which this generation is especially sensitive, that the mode of revolution helps determine its future course. A revolution accomplished by the ballot box perpetuates the notion that real change can come by manipulating papers. Rather than by people struggling to change their personal lives, their immediate relationships, their communities, and their work. Revolutions by force of arms carry forward into the new society that ruthlessness which London himself depicts and too readily accepts in the Iron Heel. Perhaps we have learned enough in the past half-century to begin to think of a novel approach to the revolution. A new mode of revolution would go far beyond the ballot box. People everywhere would begin to live cooperatively, not in mass organizations which override the individual feelings, but in small groups based on working together, resisting the state together. In such groups, new relationships of intimacy and cooperation born of common struggles could develop between black and white, old and young, male and female, all this in the midst of an inhumane society while fighting to change that society. People would work as cultural and political guerrillas, mobile, imaginative, so embedded in the lower structures of the society that in its crevices in so many places as to be invulnerable to the crude massed power of the state. If crushed in one place, these affinity groups would rise again in 10 other places until there are so many changed minds, so many changed ways of living, that the revolution would not be defeated because it would already be here. The old structures, despite their wealth and arms, would flail ineffectively at such a revolution and then begin to wither because the sustenance, the labor which operates the system and the minds that accept the system had turned to other things. There's a lot of good things in this, okay? So when I think about Howard Zinn's soft revolution, Chris Hedges had encouraged us to be revolutionary theorists. So what is the revolution? To me, I've always had 3 revolutions, but this is a 4th important one. So 3 revolutions, you got violent revolution, right, which is your George Washington kinds of revolutions. So you got the, George Washington revolution. You also have non-violent revolutions such as an electoral revolution, which is at the ballot box, and a constitutional revolution, which is also at the ballot box. So those are 3 revolutions right there: George Washington, electoral, constitutional. Now we have Howard Zinn's soft revolution, and Howard Zinn's soft revolution is sitting there saying that it's not just about voting, it's more than just voting. And then it's not just about having a revolution, because in the Iron Heel, in Jack London's Iron Heel, this is essentially, he's saying that he's going to win by power. Howard Zinn saying maybe we could do something differently. So Howard Zinn says a lot of things. He says instead of being, at the ballot box trying to change things just by manipulating papers, the way we change things is we change our personal lives, and we change our relationships, and we change our communities, and we change our work. And so he's saying instead of having a George Washington kind of revolution or an Iron Heel kind of revolution, we could actually have a soft revolution where we cooperate with each other in small groups outside the state, and these groups resist the state, but they're also in solidarity with one another. So they're working together, resisting the state together, and in these new relationships, born of intimacy and cooperation, not only, this is the new revolution. So essentially, we work and organize ourselves and with associations, free associations with this, whoever we want to hang out with. We develop these relationships, we develop these institutions, and by working separately outside the system, we actually create a brand new kind of system, a system that is, that's livable. So all this in the midst of an inhumane society while fighting to change that society. He also says that there's a lot of other things, essentially by moving out of society and working amongst ourselves in 5-10 years, because the labor is no longer a part of the system and the minds aren't a part of the system anymore, they went ahead and done this alternative society. They created an alternative system. And then after a while, the old structures just won't even be necessary. They'll be obsolete and they'll be gone. So that's what's important. Small groups of people working together, resisting the state, changing our lives, changing our relationships, changing our work, changing our communities. And by doing that, by cooperating and working with small groups and then creating these different organizations outside the system, eventually the old system will dissolve and dissipate because they're not even useful anymore. So that's the other revolution. We got Howard Zinn's soft revolution. We've got political revolution. 2, 3, 4. They're actually all political revolutions. We got an electoral revolution, a constitutional revolution, a George Washington kind of revolution, and an Howard Zinn soft revolution kind of revolution. And whereas there's pros and cons to each one of these revolutions, the biggest pro to Howard Zinn's revolution, and this, people would have to be committed. A lot of people say they don't vote, but then they're not also pushing for small groups of people working cooperatively to resist the state. If anything, they're like Christians, right? So they just say, well, give money, render to Caesar's what is Caesar, so pay your damn taxes. No, we would be resisting the state. We would be resisting the old system while creating a brand new system. So the good and bad about Howard Zinn's soft revolution is that it doesn't confront the current system. It essentially dissolves the current system because its systems are that much better. The alternative that was created is that much better than what had previously been taking place. So the political revolutions, they're all political, but they're politically different. So the electoral, constitutional, George Washington kind of revolutions are about destroying the current system and then replacing it with something else. Howard Zinn's soft revolution doesn't destroy the current system head on. It doesn't destroy it directly. It destroys it because the systems that are outside the system are better than the previous ones, and so it wins by example. I think that is probably more revolutionary, but it also takes more time, more energy. People have to be committed and focused to it. So people are saying they just don't vote. Well, they probably aren't for no Howard Zinn soft revolution neither. They're just saying, I don't know shit. I don't know how this shit works. I'm not going to participate in any of this shit. Which makes you a very typical American. Most Americans do not participate in their democracy, and then they turn around and they actually, actively say, "Oh, politics, you Schnarfeldorf. We don't talk about that politics around here." Those people who deny politics are probably the most manipulative people out here. They use power. They want to oppress you. They want to enslave you. And so they'll sit there and say, just a bunch of shit, right? They don't believe in freedom of speech. They don't believe in talking about politics. They don't want you to have power. They don't want you to advance. So this whole capitalist dog-eat-dog bullshit, it's got to change. So we have to change. And Howard Zinn's soft revolution presents a way to change without, confronting the system. Resist the state, but it doesn't say smash the state. It says resist the state. So that way, in your own little insular bubble, you can have your own democratic systems, which believes in freedom and, goes after the murderers and the rapists and, all the people that would do harm to other people. So you would create a better system than the system that we have. And so it's not confronting the old system, but it's slowly by its example. So if people actually put the sweat and the labor into it, I think Howard Zinn's soft revolution actually has a very strong chance of changing things, beyond. Could you imagine getting people to live a different system when you have all these other systems in place? And then what would that system look like? What system would be better for folks than the one that's already in place? So all these conversations would have to be had, and you'd have to institutionalize brand new, institutions, rituals, whatever, ceremonies, rules. But, yeah, I think living amongst each other, I think it's better. So he's talking about, changing our personal lives, changing our relationships, changing our communities, changing our work, and then have small groups of people working together, resisting the state together. Relationships are built from from cooperation and intimacy, and also by fighting not just the old structures directly, but by creating brand new structures that everybody loves and people can not only get along with, but liberates them. This is a liberating brand new system which liberates them, empowers them, makes them, prosperous, and liberates them, I think is the biggest thing. Frees them from the shackles of having to enslave yourself or die, which is the current dog-eat-dog capitalist system that we have now. So that's Howard Zinn, Soft Revolution. Peace.